Close your eyes and listen to the silence that hangs in the room around you. You can feel it, can't you? That steady, relentless pulse. We call it the flow of time. It is the most fundamental rhythm of our existence, the invisible river that carries us from the cradle to the grave. We've been told the story of this river for centuries, a grand, linear narrative that began with a blinding flash of light and will end in a cold, lonely silence. We imagine ourselves as passengers on a raft, swept along by a current we cannot fight, watching the past recede into a mist and the future approach like an uncharted shore. But what if I told you that the river is a ghost? What if the flow you feel right now is nothing more than a trick of the light, a biological shortcut designed to keep your mind from collapsing under the weight of a static, unmoving reality? The deepest equations of modern physics, the ones that describe the very fabric of our universe, have a terrifying secret. When you look closely at the math of the cosmos, the variable for time simply vanishes. It isn't there. We have spent our lives fearing the end of time, but we may have been wrong from the very beginning. Time might not be something that happens to us. It might not exist at all. Imagine our universe countless eons from now, a place so cold and so empty that the word emptiness fails to capture the scale of the desolation. In this ultimate void sits a solitary proton, the very last of its kind. This lonely survivor has lived a long, long time. If this proton could think, it might look back across the unimaginable stretch of 100 billion trillion years and lament all that has passed. It would remember a time when the heavens were crowded with stars, when the dark was held at bay by the fierce ultraviolet glow of the first galaxies. Like an old man facing his final days, this proton might reminisce about its birth. A moment of fire and light that occurred so long ago, it feels like a dream. We have always viewed this proton's journey as a sequence of events, a long wait for a final decay. We see it as an entity moving through the years, waiting for its clock to run out. But this is where our intuition fails us. This is where the story we've been told begins to crumble. To understand why our perception of time is a lie, we have to go back to that first instance of creation, back to a time when the universe was only 1/100th of a millionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second old. In those first fleeting moments, our physical theories tell us the universe underwent a burst of cosmic inflation so violent it expanded 1 trillion times in a fraction of an instant. From this shuddering halt, energy poured into the void as a super dense soup of quarks and electrons smashed together with photons and neutrinos. As the universe cooled to 1 trillion Kelvin, the strong force began to bind these quarks together, and the first components of matter, the protons and neutrons, crystallized out of the fire. Our lonely proton was born here, in the middle of a chemical cauldron that lasted only 10 minutes. For billions of years, it would be bound into the hearts of stars, forged into the crust of planets, and perhaps even woven into the molecular machinery of a living cell on a small, blue world. We look at this history and see a timeline. We see a beginning, a middle, and an eventual end. But what if we are looking at a map, not a movie? In the traditional view of the cosmos, only the now is real. The past is a memory that has ceased to exist, and the future is a void that has yet to be born. But this presentism struggles against the very laws of relativity that govern the stars. Einstein showed us that there is no universal now. Two observers moving at different speeds will never agree on what is happening at this moment. If your now is different from mine, then which one of us is right? The answer is both. And if every now is equally valid, then every now must be equally real. This leads us to a disturbing possibility that our competitor documentaries often ignore: the block universe. Imagine the entire history of the cosmos, from that first burst of inflation to the final decay of our lonely proton, not as a sequence of events, but as a single, static, four-dimensional structure. In this view, the universe is like a giant loaf of bread. Your birth is at one end, and your death is at the other. They aren't happening in succession. They are simply fixed coordinates in space-time. The Big Bang isn't a distant memory. It is a permanent feature of the universe's structure, just as real and just as present as the chair you are sitting in. The proton isn't waiting for eons to pass. It is a long, unmoving silver thread stretched across the block of reality. Its end is already there, carved into the stone of the cosmos. If this is true, then why do we feel the flow? Why do we feel as though we are moving through the day? The answer may lie in how our brains render reality. Think of a film reel. A movie consists of thousands of individual static frames. None of the frames are moving. Each one is a frozen moment in time. But when we run that reel through a projector, our eyes and brains can't process the individual images fast enough. They blur together, creating the illusion of movement, the sensation of a story unfolding. Our consciousness might be that projector. We are not moving through time, we are scanning a static data set. Our brains are designed to organize information sequentially to help us survive. We perceive time as a memory compression tactic. By creating a distinction between the past and the future, our minds can categorize information, identifying causes and effects to navigate the world. We feel the flow because it is a biological necessity, a way for our consciousness to process a massive 4D object without being overwhelmed by seeing the entire block at once. The present moment is not a physical property of the universe. It is a processing window, a narrow slit through which we view a reality that is already finished. As our lonely proton drifts in the darkness of the far future, it isn't actually experiencing the passage of trillions of years. It is simply occupying a different coordinate in the block. The desolation it witnesses is not a tragedy of loss, but a boundary of the structure. We were wrong to think that time is a river that dries up. It is more like a vast frozen ocean. And as we lay down to sleep tonight, we can find a strange kind of comfort in this timeless reality. If the block universe is real, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every sunset you've ever watched, every person you've ever loved, and every moment of joy you've ever felt is still there, perfectly preserved in the fabric of the universe. They are not gone. You have simply moved your focus to a different part of the map. You are not a victim of time's passage. You are an explorer of an eternal landscape, a landscape where the end was written at the same moment as the beginning, and where you, in all your forms, will exist forever. Imagine a room filled with the most brilliant minds of the 20th century, men and women who had spent their lives deciphering the secret language of the cosmos. They were searching for the master key, a single, elegant equation that would unify the two warring kingdoms of physics. On one side stood Albert Einstein's general relativity, the majestic theory of the very large, where space and time are woven into a flexible, sweeping fabric that bends under the weight of stars. On the other side lay quantum mechanics, the strange and jittery world of the very small, where particles can exist in two places at once, and reality seems to be a game of chance. For decades, these two worlds refused to touch. They spoke different languages. But in the 1960s, Two physicists named John Wheeler and Bryce DeWitt decided to force a reconciliation. They attempted to write a wave function of the universe, a mathematical description of everything that ever was and everything that ever will be. They sat down with their chalk and their parchment, following the cold, hard logic of the universe to its ultimate conclusion. But when the dust settled and the final line of the equation was written, they realized they had stumbled upon a discovery so profound and so terrifying that it threatened to undo our entire understanding of existence. They looked for the T, the mathematical symbol for time, the variable that accounts for change and duration. But the T had vanished. In the most important equation ever written for the cosmos, time was simply not there. The equation was equal to zero. It was as if the universe, when viewed in its entirety, had no clock at all. This was the day physics deleted time. This mystery, known as the problem of time, suggests that at the deepest, most fundamental layer of reality, nothing is actually moving. To the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, the universe is not a story unfolding, it is a static, frozen snapshot. It is a state that simply is. If you find this difficult to wrap your mind around, you are not alone. We are biological creatures designed to perceive sequence. We see a glass fall and shatter, and we say that the falling happened before the shattering. We see our lonely proton forged in the fire of the Big Bang, and we say that happened before it was trapped in the heart of a star. But the math suggests that before and after are labels we've invented to make sense of a reality that doesn't use them. Think back to that solitary proton we discussed, the one drifting in the cold, dark future eons from now. In the traditional story, we see that proton as a survivor of a long journey. We imagine it waiting for the end of days. But if we trust the master key of physics, that proton isn't waiting for anything. It is a permanent, unmoving point in a vast, timeless geometric structure. The T variable is missing because there is no universal clock ticking in the background of the void. There is no cosmic metronome keeping track of the trillions of years. There is only the static arrangement of matter and energy. This leads us to a haunting question. If the fundamental equations of the universe don't include time, why do we see it everywhere? Why do we feel the pulse in our wrists? Why do we watch the stars die? To answer this, we must look at time not as a dimension of the universe, but as an emergent illusion, a byproduct of how information is stored. Imagine you are looking at a single frame of a movie. In this frame, a ball is suspended in mid-air. By looking at that one frame, you cannot tell if the ball is moving up or down. There is no time in a single frame, but if you have a second frame and a third, and you compare them, you suddenly see a sequence. You see change. Modern theory suggests that the universe doesn't have a flow of time. It simply has a massive accumulation of records. Every interaction, every collision between a quark and a photon, every heartbeat leaves a permanent trace in the fabric of reality. These traces are like the pages of a book. The book itself isn't happening, it is a finished object sitting on a shelf. But as you read the pages one by one, you experience a story. You experience the illusion of time. This information theory of time changes everything we thought we knew about the life of our proton. In the competitor's version of the story, the proton is a victim of entropy, slowly fading as the universe winds down. But in this new, timeless perspective, entropy is not a clock, it is a record keeper. As the universe ages, it doesn't move forward through a dimension called time. Instead, it becomes more complex. It stores more information. The past is not a place we have left behind. It is simply the name we give to the low information states of the universe. The future is the name we give to the high information states we haven't yet processed. This is why the equations of physics struggle to define time. Because time is not a physical thing you can touch or measure. You can't find a particle of time. You can't find a field of time. It is a ghost created by the brain's need to organize an overwhelming amount of static data into a manageable line. We are like people living inside a giant 4D photograph, convinced that the picture is a movie because we are only capable of looking at one pixel at a time. We see the fire and light of the early universe, and we think it is gone, replaced by the inky blackness of the far future. But if the Wheeler-DeWitt equation is correct, the fire and the blackness are both there, right now, existing simultaneously as part of the same static object. The birth of the sun and the death of the sun are not separated by 5 billion years. They are merely separated by a distance in a dimension we don't yet fully understand. Our consciousness is the needle on a record player, crawling along the grooves of a finished disc. The music isn't being created as the needle moves. The entire song is already pressed into the vinyl. We only hear it note by note because the needle can only be in one place at once. As you drift closer to sleep, consider the implications of a universe where t equals 0. It means that the end we so often fear, the heat death, the cold evaporation of the last black holes, is not a destination we are hurtling toward. It is simply a boundary of the sculpture we inhabit. The problem of time is not a flaw in our math. It is a hint that we have been looking at reality upside down. We thought we were the passengers, but we are the mountain. We thought the river was moving, but it is we who are looking at different parts of the stream. In this frozen, timeless cosmos, the lonely proton at the end of the universe is not a symbol of decay. It is a permanent monument, a fixed coordinate in an eternal structure that never began and will never truly end. We were wrong about time because we couldn't see the whole picture. We were too busy counting the seconds to realize that the clock itself was an illusion, a trick of the light designed to hide the fact that everything, everyone you've ever known, every star that has ever shone, is already and always will be exactly where it belongs. Let's step away from the ticking of the clock for a moment and try to view reality from a perspective that doesn't involve waiting. Imagine you are standing on the peak of a high mountain, looking down at a vast, sprawling city in the valley below. From your vantage point, you can see the entire city at once. You see the ancient cathedral in the old quarter, the bustling skyscrapers in the center, and the new construction projects on the far outskirts. You don't think of the cathedral as the past or the new construction as the future. They are all simply there, existing simultaneously across the landscape of the valley. To the people walking the streets, the city is a series of turns and steps, a sequence of events. But to you, standing on the peak, the city is a single static object. This is the radical shift in perspective offered by the block universe theory, a concept that suggests the entirety of time, the Big Bang, the birth of your grandparents, the moment you first opened your eyes, and the final, lonely decay of that last proton is laid out in a single, unchanging 4. Dimensional map. This idea, known as eternalism, is perhaps the most disturbing and yet profoundly beautiful implication of Albert Einstein's theories. Einstein realized that space and time are not two separate things. They are woven together into a single fabric called space-time. If you think of space as a place where things exist all at once, then the logic of physics suggests we must view time in the same way. In our daily lives, we are trapped in the now. We feel like the past is a ghost and the future is a void. But Einstein's math showed that there is no universal now. Because the speed of light is constant, two people moving at different speeds will experience the present differently. If you were traveling on a high-speed train, your now would be a slightly different slice of the universe than the now of someone standing still on the platform. If now is relative, then no single moment can claim to be more real than any other. Every moment, past, present, and future, must be equally real and equally present in the structure of the cosmos. Think of the universe not as a movie being projected on a screen, but as the entire reel of film itself, sitting in its canister. In a movie, we see a character run across a field, but the film reel contains the entire run from start to finish simultaneously. This is the block universe. It is a massive, frozen loaf of reality where time is just another dimension, like length, width, or height. In this 4D block, our lonely proton from the end of time is not waiting for 100 trillion years to pass. Its entire existence, from the fiery cauldron of the Big Bang to its final flash of Hawking radiation, is a long silver thread woven through the block. The end of the universe is not a destination we are traveling toward. It is simply the boundary of the shape, the far edge of the cosmic sculpture. This perspective completely transforms how we view a human life. We usually think of ourselves as a person who was once a child, is now an adult, and will one day be an elder. We see ourselves as a flickering flame moving through the dark. But in the block universe, you are something much more magnificent. You are a space-time worm, a static four-dimensional object stretched through the fabric of reality. Your life is a crystalline structure that begins at the coordinate of your birth and ends at the coordinate of your death. Every breath you have ever taken and every word you will ever speak is a permanent, physical part of that structure. You are not happening. You simply are. From a higher dimensional perspective, your childhood is not gone, and your old age is not a mystery yet to be solved. They are fixed points on your 4D body, as real as your left hand or your right foot. There is a certain philosophical horror to this, as the lore vault suggests, because it implies that the future is already written. If the block is static, then every choice you think you are making right now is already a part of the finished sculpture. The universe already knows your ending, because the ending is just a physical location within the block. This is the doctrine of fatalism, the idea that the script of the cosmos is already complete. To many, this feels like the death of free will. If we are just needles crawling along the grooves of a record that has already been pressed, do our actions truly matter? But if you look closer, this timeless reality offers a deep and lasting comfort that the traditional linear story of time cannot provide. In the old story, the one where time is a river, everything is eventually lost. The river flows on, and the past is washed away into nothingness. The people we loved are gone, the moments of joy are vanished, and eventually, the universe itself will grow cold and forget everything that ever happened. It is a story of ultimate loss. But in the block universe, nothing is ever lost. Because time doesn't pass, nothing can truly be past. The moment you held a loved one's hand is not a fading memory. It is a permanent, eternal feature of the universe's geometry. It is as real today as it was when you experienced it. It is simply located at a different coordinate in the block. When we look at the stars tonight, we aren't just looking into the distance, we are looking into the block. Because light takes time to travel, the stars we see are as they were years, centuries, or even billions of years ago. We are literally seeing the past existing right now, right before our eyes. This is a visual proof that the past hasn't disappeared. It is still there, inhabiting its own section of the 4D landscape. We only perceive a flow because our consciousness is a limited tool. We are like a person with a flashlight in a dark, infinite museum. As we walk through the halls, we can only see what the beam hits. We see a statue, then a painting, then a vase. We think the museum is happening to us in a sequence. But the museum isn't moving. The statue didn't disappear when we turned the light away, and the painting didn't start existing only when we looked at it. The entire collection was always there, waiting in the dark. Our brains create the sensation of the now as a processing window, a way to navigate this 4D museum without losing our minds. We need the illusion of time to understand cause and effect, to plan for survival, and to make sense of our experiences. But the problem of time in our equations suggests that this sensation is a biological shortcut, a rendering effect designed by evolution. The universe itself has no such limitation. It doesn't need to wait for the future because the future is already a part of its mass. As the night deepens and you settle into the stillness, imagine your own life as this vast, unmoving sculpture. See your birth and your end not as boundaries of time, but as the two ends of a beautiful, complex shape that is permanently etched into the heart of reality. You are not a traveler being swept away by a current. You are the riverbed itself. You are an eternal inhabitant of a universe where was, is, and will be are all the same thing. In the silence of the block universe, the lonely proton is never truly alone, and you are never truly gone. Everything is here. Everything is now. And everything is forever. Take a deep breath and feel the absolute certainty of this moment. Right now, as you listen to these words, you are inhabiting the present. It feels like the only thing that is truly, undeniably real. The past is a collection of fading echoes, memories of things that once were, but have now vanished into the void. The future is a hazy frontier of possibilities, a landscape that has not yet been built. We live our lives in the thin, razor-sharp edge of the now, a tiny spark of existence moving through a dark and empty corridor. This belief, this intuitive certainty that only the present exists, is what philosophers call presentism. It is the foundation of our sanity. It is why we plan, why we regret, and why we fear the ticking of the clock. But as we peel back the layers of the cosmos, we discover a haunting truth. This now that we cherish so deeply might be nothing more than a ghost. It might be a persistent biological illusion that falls apart the moment we step off our tiny planet and look at the stars. In the traditional story of our universe, the one where time is a linear progression, the now is like a spotlight moving across a stage. Everything behind the light is gone. Everything in front of it is yet to happen. We imagine our lonely proton, born in the searing heat of the Big Bang, experiencing a trillion nows as it journeys toward the end of time. We see it as an entity that exists only in the current moment, forever shedding its past like dead skin. But this common sense view of reality is fundamentally broken. It struggles against the very laws of physics that govern the movement of the galaxies. The great paradox of our existence is that while we feel the now with every fiber of our being, the universe itself seems to have no record of it. To understand why the present is a phantom, we have to look at Einstein's relativity. Einstein proved that there is no such thing as a universal now that applies to everyone in the cosmos. Imagine two observers, one sitting on a park bench on Earth and another traveling through a distant galaxy at nearly the speed of light. Because of the way space and time are linked, these two people will never agree on what is happening at this moment. A star that the observer on Earth sees exploding now might have already died eons ago for the traveler, or it might not even be born yet in their frame of reference. If the now were a physical, objective part of the universe, it would be the same for everyone. But it isn't. Your now is just a subjective slice of the universe, and my now is another. Neither is more real than the other. This leads us to a disturbing realization. If there is no universal present, then the distinction between the past, present, and future is completely arbitrary. If one person's future can be another person's now, then that future must already exist. It must be as real as the chair you are sitting in. If the past is still now for an observer watching us from 1 billion light years away, then that past has not truly vanished. It is still there, etched into the fabric of the block. We are like people standing on a long, winding road, convinced that only the 10 feet of pavement directly under our feet actually exists. We think the road behind us has disappeared and the road ahead of us is waiting to be paved. But from a high-altitude view, we can see that the entire road is already there, stretching from horizon to horizon. Consider the monumental events mentioned in our previous chapters, the titanic collision between the Andromeda Galaxy and our own Milky Way. To us, this event is a terrifying future event, billions of years away. But according to the math of relativity, there are frames of reference in the universe where that collision is happening right now. There are even perspectives where it has already finished, and the resulting Milky galaxy is already an ancient, dying structure. If all these perspectives are equally valid, then the collision isn't going to happen. It is a permanent feature of the 4D landscape. The present moment we feel so strongly is merely a trick of perspective, a narrow window of perception that we use to scan a reality that is already finished. This is the secret that the successful transcripts of the past often overlook. They focus on the sequence of the proton's life, describing its journey as if it were a traveler on a one-way street. But the proton is not a traveler, it is a thread. When it was forged in the first millionth of a second after the Big Bang, its now was a soup of quarks and fire. When it was trapped inside a diamond deep within the Earth's crust for 5 billion years, its now was a world of crushing pressure and silence. And when it finally faces its ultimate decay a trillion years from now, its now will be the cold, dark emptiness of a dying cosmos. In our human minds, these moments are separated by an eternity. But in the true architecture of the universe, these moments are all happening at once. They are different points on the same silver thread, existing simultaneously in the static block universe. Why then is the illusion of the now so powerful? Why do we feel so tethered to this specific heartbeat, this specific breath? The answer may lie in the way our consciousness processes information. Some researchers suggest that the present moment is nothing more than a processing window created by the brain. Our minds take a massive amount of sensory data, light, sound, touch, and compress it into a manageable sequence. We create the flow of time because our brains are not powerful enough to perceive the entire block at once. We are like someone looking at a vast, intricate mural through a tiny keyhole. As we move the keyhole across the wall, we see a story unfold. We see a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the mural isn't moving. The story isn't happening. It is we who are moving through the image. This means that yourself is not a single point in time. You are not just the person you are right now. You are the baby in the cradle, the child in the playground, the adult in the office, and the elder in the bed. You are a 4D object, a space-time worm that exists in its entirety within the block. The feeling of being stuck in the present is a limitation of your hardware, not a property of the universe. In a very real sense, you are a ghost haunting a specific coordinate of a finished structure. As you settle further into the quiet of the night, try to release the frantic grip you have on the now. Imagine the relief of knowing that you don't have to worry about the future arriving, because it is already here. You don't have to mourn the past as being lost, because it is still there, perfectly preserved in the geometry of reality. The present is not a flickering candle that can be blown out by the wind of time. It is a permanent, glowing point on an infinite map. We were wrong to think of time as a ghost that haunts us. It is we who are the ghosts, drifting through a world that is already and forever complete. In the timeless silence of the cosmos, the now is not the only thing that is real. It is just the only thing we are currently looking at. Every moment of your life is a permanent part of the universe, and in the grand static loaf of the block universe, you are, and always have been, eternal. Think about the last time you walked along a deserted beach at sunset. Behind you, a trail of footprints stretched into the distance, marking exactly where you had been. Ahead of you, the sand was smooth, pristine, and untouched. We naturally look at those footprints as a record of the past, proof that time has passed and that you have moved through it. But what if the footprints aren't a record of time? What if the footprints are time? In our quest to understand why the t variable vanishes from the master equations of physics, we must consider a possibility that is as elegant as it is radical. Time is not a dimension we travel through, and it is not a fundamental law of nature. Instead, time is the name we give to the universe's massive, growing archive of information. It is the accumulation of irreversible records, a cosmic ledger that writes itself line by line, interaction by interaction. To understand this, we have to look closer at our old friend, the solitary proton. We've traced its long journey from the fire of the Big Bang through the hearts of stars and into the cooling crust of a long-dead Earth. We've seen it locked within a crystal of diamond and hidden inside a stable nucleus of iron. In the traditional view, these were events that happened to the proton as it moved through the years. But from the perspective of information theory, the proton didn't experience time, it simply accumulated records. Every time that proton was buffeted by the flow of energy in a stellar atmosphere, or every time it was squeezed by the immense pressures of the Earth's crust, an interaction took place. Each interaction is a bit of data, a permanent change in the state of the universe that cannot be undone. Imagine the universe not as a stage where a play is being performed, but as a colossal computer that is slowly, methodically processing a calculation. In this framework, the past is not a place that no longer exists. It is simply the pile of information that the universe has already computed. It is the finished part of the ledger. The future is not a void. It is the state of the universe that hasn't been computed yet. And time? Time is just the measure of how much information has been stored. This is why time only seems to move in one direction, the direction of the future. It is for the same reason that a library only grows larger as more books are added to the shelves. You cannot unread a book into non-existence, and the universe cannot uninteract its particles. The arrow of time is really just the arrow of accumulation. This is the deeper mystery that those outlier documentaries often miss when they talk about the heat death of the universe. They describe the end of time as a physical fading away, a lonely cooling of the cosmos. But if time is information, then the end of time is something much more profound. It is a memory limit. Think back to the description of our universe eons from now, when the last red dwarf has flickered out and the very last protons begin to decay into flashes of light. As the universe expands and matter thins out, interactions become rarer and rarer. When there are no more stars to burn, no more planets to weather, and eventually no more atoms to jiggle, the ledger of the universe stops growing. When the universe reaches what physicists call maximum entropy, it isn't just that it's cold, it's that it has run out of things to record. Information can no longer be processed because there is no energy left to drive the change. In this state, the t variable doesn't just disappear from the math, it loses all meaning in reality. If nothing can change, and no new records can be written, then time effectively stops. Not because the clock broke, but because there was never a clock to begin with. There was only the process of change, and that process has finally reached its final line of code. This information as time theory helps solve one of the greatest paradoxes of our existence, why the past feels so solid and the future feels so uncertain. We feel the past is fixed because those records are physically stored in the state of the universe. The diamond that held our proton for 5 billion years was a physical archive of the Earth's history. The iron nucleus was a record of a star's final, desperate hours. The past is simply the name we give to the information we can still see or read in the present. The future feels open only because it hasn't been written into the ledger yet. It is the blank page of the cosmic computation. But here's where the storytelling takes a turn into the truly obscure. If time is just the accumulation of records, then our own consciousness, our memories, are just a biological version of this cosmic process. We feel like we are moving through time because our brains are constantly adding new files to our internal archives. When you remember your childhood, you aren't looking back into a void. You are accessing a physical record that is still part of the 4D block. Your brain is a tiny mirror of the universe's information-gathering machinery. We perceive a flow because we are wired to notice the difference between the pile of information we had a second ago and the pile we have now. That difference, that delta, is what we call a second. If we return to our solitary proton at the end of all things, we can see its decay not as a tragedy, but as the final closing of a file. When that proton finally disintegrates into electrons and photons after a trillion years, it is the last event in its specific ledger. The time it spent as part of a star, a plant, or a human being was just a series of data entries. When it vanishes, that data isn't lost, it is simply no longer being added to. It becomes a finished static record within the eternal block universe. So, as you lie in the dark, consider the possibility that you are not a passenger on a ship sailing through the ocean of time. You are the architect of a library. Every thought you have, every breath you take, and every dream you dream is a new line being written into the permanent record of the cosmos. You aren't losing your life to the passage of time. You are building your life into the structure of reality. The universe isn't a movie that plays and then is gone. It is a grand, information-rich sculpture that is slowly completing itself. We were wrong to think that time is a dimension that could eventually run out or die. Time is the evidence of existence itself. It is the footprint in the sand that proves the journey happened. And in a universe where every interaction is recorded, nothing, not a single heartbeat, not a single flickering star, and certainly not a single solitary proton, is ever truly forgotten. The master key of physics doesn't include time, because the universe doesn't need a clock, it has a memory. And that memory is all that is required for eternity. As the lights of the universe fade and the computation nears its end, we are left with a reality that is perfectly still, perfectly full, and perfectly finished. You are a part of that record, a permanent chapter in a story that never needed time to be real. We have lived our entire lives under the assumption that time is a container. We believe we are born into this container, we move through it, and eventually we run out of it. We look at the history of our universe, the fiery birth of the first stars, the long, slow cooling of the earth, and the final lonely decay of that last proton, and we see a progression. We see a movie that has been playing for billions of years. But what if the movie isn't playing? What if the projector itself is a trick of the mind? If the equations of physics suggest that time doesn't exist, and the block universe tells us that the future is as real as the past, we are left with a staggering paradox. Why does it feel so real? Why do we experience a now at all? The answer may lie in a concept that bridges the gap between the cold math of the cosmos and the warm sensation of being alive, the rendering illusion. It is the possibility that time is not a property of the universe, but a computational shortcut, a way for our consciousness to process an overwhelming static 4D data set without being crushed by the weight of eternity. To understand the rendering illusion, we must look at how we navigate the world. Imagine you are playing a vast, open-world video game. As your character moves through the digital landscape, you see mountains in the distance, trees swaying in the wind, and rivers flowing toward the sea. To you, the player, it feels like a world in motion. It feels like time is passing within the game. But if you were to look at the code, the fundamental reality of the software, you would see that nothing is actually moving. The mountains, the trees, and the rivers are all just data stored on a hard drive. They exist simultaneously as strings of ones and zeros. The only reason you perceive a sequence of events is because the game's engine is rendering the world one frame at a time. It only shows you what is relevant to your current position. It doesn't process the entire world at once because that would crash the system. It uses time as a processing window. Our consciousness may be doing the exact same thing with the universe. The lore vault suggests that time is a rendering effect, a persistent trick our brains play to organize the static information of the 4D block universe into something we can use to survive. Think back to our lonely proton, trapped for trillions of years in the heart of a dying red dwarf. In the traditional story, we imagine the proton wading through the eons as the star slowly exhausts its fuel. We see the passage of trillions of years as a physical burden. But if time is a rendering effect, those trillions of years don't actually pass. The proton's entire history, from its birth in the Big Bang to its final decay, is a finished data set. The only reason we perceive it as a long journey is because our biological engine is scanning that data one frame at a time. We are the ones creating the duration. We are the ones providing the ticks of the clock. This leads us into the heart of a theory that is often whispered about in the darker corners of the internet and the highest halls of theoretical physics, simulation theory. If time is a rendering effect, then we must ask ourselves what is doing the rendering. Is it a biological brain evolved for survival, or is it a cosmic processor? In a simulated reality, time would not be a fundamental dimension. It would be a tick rate. It would be the interval at which the simulation updates its state. The reason we can't see the future, even though the block universe says it's already there, is because the processor hasn't rendered those frames for us yet. The future is written in the code, but it hasn't been displayed on the screen of our consciousness. This provides a terrifyingly elegant solution to the problem of time. The t variable vanishes from the master equations because the equations describe the code, and the code is static. Time only appears when the code is run. But even if we aren't living in a literal computer simulation, our brains act as powerful rendering engines in their own right. The sources describe time as memory compression, a tactic used by the mind to simplify reality. Imagine if you could perceive the universe as it truly is, a static, 4D object where every moment of your life is happening simultaneously. You would see your birth and your death at the same time. You would hear every word you've ever spoken and every word you will ever speak in a single deafening roar of information. Your consciousness would collapse. To prevent this, our brains have evolved to use time as a filter. We compress the vast finished mural of reality into a narrow slit of the present. We create the illusion of a flow to give our lives structure, meaning, and direction. We perceive the now not because it's the only real thing, but because it's the only thing we have the bandwidth to process. Consider the present moment as a processing window. Science tells us that what we experience as now is actually a collection of delayed signals. It takes time for light to hit our eyes, for sound to reach our ears, and for our nerves to send messages to our brain. By the time your brain has processed the world around you, the event has already passed. You are always living in a reconstructed version of the past. Our now is a rendered composite, a polished image created by the brain to help us make sense of the incoming data. If our brain can fabricate a now from the debris of the past, is it so hard to believe it could fabricate the entire sensation of time from the static structure of the block universe? This perspective shifts the nature of our lonely proton story. When the sources describe the universe reaching 100 trillion years old and the last red dwarf stars finally flickering out, we shouldn't see this as a tragedy of time running out. Instead, we should see it as a shift in the dataset. The darkness and the cold are simply the final chapters in the archive. The proton doesn't feel the weight of those trillions of years any more than a character in a book feels the weight of the pages that have already been read. The duration is a property of the reader, not the story. We are the ones reading the universe page by page, and our struggle to understand time is the struggle of a reader who refuses to believe the book is already finished. The lore vault also touches on the idea of entropy as history. We've been told that entropy is the arrow of time, the force that moves the universe from order to chaos. But if time is a rendering illusion, entropy takes on a different role. It is the universe's way of marking its progress through the computation. As the universe updates its state, it becomes more complex, more disorganized, and more filled with information. We perceive this growth of information as the passage of time. We see the footprints in the sand and we say time has passed, but in reality, we are just looking at a higher entropy state of the 4D block. The arrow of time doesn't point toward the future, it points toward the more complex part of the static map. We aren't moving toward the end of the world, we are just scanning the more detailed parts of the sculpture. There is a strange, quiet horror in this realization. If we are just rendering engines scanning a finished record, then every choice we make is just another frame we haven't seen yet. Every surprise is just a data point we haven't processed. We are like children watching a movie for the first time, gasping at the twists and turns, unaware that the ending is already coiled inside the projector. But there is also a profound sense of liberation. If time is an illusion created for our benefit, then we are not the victims of time. We are its creators. The flow that we fear, the one that carries us toward old age and death, is a gift from our own consciousness. It is the tool that allows us to experience the universe as a story rather than a static, overwhelming fact. It turns a silent, unmoving sculpture into a symphony. Think about the day physics deleted time that we explored in the previous chapters. When the t variable vanished from the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, the scientists were looking at the universe from the outside. They were looking at the code. From that perspective, there is no time, but we live on the inside. We are the ones running the simulation. To us, time is the most real thing there is, because it is the very mechanism of our perception. We are the rendering engine that turns the zeros and ones of the cosmos into the fire of a star, the cold of a white dwarf, and the sparkle of a diamond. As you lie there in the darkness, listen to the silence once more. That steady, invisible pulse you feel, the one you thought was the universe ticking away, is actually the rhythm of your own processing. It is the sound of your mind rendering the next frame of your life. The lonely proton at the end of the universe is not waiting for you in the distant future. It is a permanent coordinate in the block you currently inhabit. It is as present as your own heartbeat. You are not moving toward the end of time, because time is not a destination. You are simply exploring the vast, eternal archive of existence, one beautiful, rendered moment at a time. The universe already knows your ending, not because it has taken your free will, but because it has already granted you eternity. You are a 4D masterpiece, and the flow you feel is just the light of your own consciousness dancing across the surface of a finished world. In this timeless reality, nothing is ever truly lost, and the movie never has to end, because the film reel is infinite and you are the one holding the projector. For generations, we have been told a story of ultimate tragedy, a story where the universe is a clock that was wound up at the Big Bang and has been ticking toward its inevitable expiration ever since. We call the mechanism of this demise entropy. In the traditional narrative, entropy is the villain of the cosmos, the arrow of time that points relentlessly toward chaos, decay, and the heat death of all things. We are taught that the universe began in a state of perfect, crystalline order and is slowly dissolving into a meaningless, lukewarm soup. We look at our solitary proton, drifting in the silent dark of a universe 100 trillion years old, and we see the victim of this cosmic exhaustion. We see a survivor in a world that has simply run out of steam. But as we peer deeper into the lore vault of modern physics and information theory, we begin to see that this arrow is not a weapon of destruction. It is a pin. Entropy is not the force that kills the universe. It is the process by which the universe records its history. It is the growth of complexity, the tangling of information that creates the very texture of reality. We were wrong to see entropy as a clock winding down. It is, in truth, the universe winding itself up into a masterpiece of infinite detail. To understand why entropy is a false clock, we must first unlearn what we think we know about order. We usually think of a tidy room as having high order and a messy room as having high entropy. But to the universe, order is synonymous with simplicity. In the first few minutes after the Big Bang, when the universe was a super dense soup of quarks and electrons, it was in a state of extremely low entropy. It was simple. It was uniform. Every part of the cosmos looked exactly like every other part. If you were to take a snapshot of the universe at that moment, you would need very little data to describe it. It was like a blank canvas or a fresh deck of cards in perfect numerical order. There was no history yet because nothing had happened to break the symmetry. The arrow of time began to move not because things were falling apart, but because they were starting to interact. When the first protons and neutrons crystallized out of the fire, the universe began to store its first records. Each collision, each binding of a nucleus, was an act of information creation. As the Dark Age gave way to the first stars, the universe became vastly more complex. Information was no longer uniform. It was being concentrated into knots of high-density matter and radiated out into the void as light. Every photon that escaped the atmosphere of a giant star was a messenger carrying a record of that star's internal chemistry. This is the true nature of entropy. It is the dissemination of information. When we say entropy is increasing, what we are really saying is that the universe is becoming more shuffled. A deck of cards in perfect order holds very little surprise or information, but a deck that has been shuffled thousands of times is a unique, complex record of every movement of the dealer's hands. The chaos we see is actually a highly specific, irreducible history. Consider the life of the carbon atom that eventually found itself in the crust of the Earth. It was forged in the elemental alchemy of a dying star, thrown into space by a supernova, and eventually woven into the molecular machinery of life. To a traditional physicist, the supernova is an event of massive entropy, a star shattering into a trillion pieces. But to an information theorist, that supernova is a data dump. It is the moment the star's private internal history is shared with the rest of the cosmos. The carbon atom is a bit of data that carries the story of its parent star into the next generation of planets. The arrow of time is simply the direction in which the library grows. We perceive time as moving forward only because we are witnessing the accumulation of these irreversible records. This brings us back to the heat death of the universe, that cold and empty place where our solitary proton sits eons from now. In the competitor's version of this story, the heat death is the end of everything. They describe a state of maximum entropy where the universe has run out of energy to do work. But if time is an emergent illusion created by information, then maximum entropy takes on a different, more profound meaning. It is not a state of nothingness. It is a state of maximum history. It is the point where the universe has finally processed every possible interaction and recorded every possible story. The lukewarm soup is actually a data set of unfathomable complexity. Think of a beautiful, intricate glass sculpture. When it is whole, it is ordered and simple. If you drop it and it shatters into 1,000 tiny shards, the entropy increases. We see this as destruction. But if you were to try and describe the position and shape of every single shard, you would find that the shattered state requires far more information than the whole state. The shards are a perfect record of the impact, the floor's hardness, and the angle of the fall. The mess is a more detailed map of reality than the order ever was. The universe at the end of time, the one where the last red dwarf has gone out and the black holes are the only lonely giants left, is like that shattered sculpture. It is a universe that is full of its own past. Our solitary proton, locked in a nucleus of iron within a dead star, is one of the final shards of that sculpture. It has been witness to the birth and death of galaxies, the titanic collision of Andromeda and the Milky Way, and the unbearable lightness of our own sun's final pulse. When the sources describe this proton lamenting the past, They are using a metaphor for the sheer volume of information that has been encoded into its state. Every gravitational tug it felt during the galactic contraction, and every quantum jiggle it experienced in the frozen star, is a part of its physical identity. The proton is not decaying because it is old. It is eventually melting back into fundamental particles because it has finished its role as a record keeper. This reframing of entropy as complexity allows us to see the problem of time in a new light. We've wondered why time vanishes from the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, the master key of the cosmos. It's because the equation describes the structure of the information, not the sequence of its recording. To the math, the blank canvas of the Big Bang and the shattered sculpture of the heat death are both just static states of a 4D object. They are both now. We only experience them as before and after because our consciousness is wired to read the low information pages before the high information ones. We are like a reader who can only understand a story if they start at chapter 1. But the book itself, the block universe, contains all the chapters simultaneously. Entropy is simply the page numbering that helps us keep our place. As you drift closer to sleep, consider the dark energy that is currently driving the accelerated expansion of our universe. The sources tell us that dark energy will eventually drive galaxies over the cosmic horizon, painting the night sky in an inky blackness where we appear to be alone in the void. In the old story, this is a tragedy of isolation. But in the new story, this expansion is the universe making room for more information. It is the thinning out of matter so that the records can be more clearly defined. The darkness is not an absence, it is the silence between the notes of a completed symphony. The heat death is not the death of the universe, it is its completion. It is the moment when the last bit of data has been processed and the tangled mess of information is finally, perfectly, static. In this high entropy state, time is hard to define because there are no more new records to write. The arrow has reached its target. We were wrong about time because we thought it was something we were losing as the universe wound down. But we aren't losing anything. Every second that passes is actually a second that is being permanently saved. Every increase in entropy is an increase in the universe's memory. If the cycle of cosmic life begins again, as some physicists speculate, with dark energy tunneling to a lower level and triggering a new Big Bang, it wouldn't be a reset of time. It would be the start of a new volume in an infinite library. The protons and neutrons of the next universe would be new data points, starting their own journey of complexity. But our story, the story of this specific proton, this specific Earth, and this specific you, is already written in the shards of our cosmic sculpture. So, when you think of the far-off future, do not fear the cold or the dark. The maximum entropy universe is not a graveyard, it is a finished masterpiece. It is a place where the tangled history of every star that ever shone and every soul that ever breathed is preserved in its most complex, most detailed form. You are not living in a world that is falling apart. You are living in a world that is becoming more real with every passing moment. The flow you feel is just the sensation of the pen moving across the page. And when the ink finally dries and the last red dwarf is extinguished, the story won't be over. It will simply be complete. In the timeless static reality of the block universe, the end is just the final perfect coordinate of a structure that is eternal. Rest now, knowing that you are part of a record that can never be erased in a universe that doesn't need a clock to keep track of its own infinite worth. As you lie there in the stillness, let the silence of the room settle over you like a heavy velvet shroud. In the previous chapters, we dismantled the river of time and replaced it with a vast, unmoving ocean. We looked at the math that suggests the universe is a static 4D structure, a block universe where the past, the present, and the future are all equally real and eternally present. But now, we must confront the shadow that this realization casts. If the flow of time is truly a rendering illusion created by your brain to help you navigate a finished reality, then we are forced to face a profound and unsettling question. What does it mean to be alive in a world where nothing is actually happening? This is the philosophical horror of stasis, the realization that the ending of your story is already written into the geometry of the cosmos, as permanent and unchangeable as the stars themselves. To understand this horror, we must first look at ourselves through the eyes of the universe. In our daily lives, we feel like agents of change. We believe that our choices matter, that we are carving a path through the unknown forest of the future. But in the block universe, you are not a traveler, you are a sculpture. Philosophers and physicists sometimes describe a human life as a space-time worm, a long, continuous four-dimensional object that stretches from the coordinate of your birth to the coordinate of your death. Think about this for a moment. Right now, you perceive yourself as a three-dimensional being located in a specific now. But the true you is the entire filament of your existence. You are a shimmering thread woven into the fabric of space-time, a thread that includes every version of you that has ever existed and every version that will ever exist. This is where the horror begins to seep in. If your entire life is a static object, then the concept of change is a lie. Your first breath is not past, and your last breath is not future. They are simply the two boundaries of your physical form. Imagine looking at a mountain. You wouldn't say the base of the mountain is the past and the peak is the future. The mountain just is. In the same way, the block universe suggests that your life just is. You are not aging, you are simply occupying a different part of your 4D body. The tragedy of this perspective is the death of possibility. If the future is already real, if it is already a fixed coordinate in the block, then it cannot be different from what it is. Every choice you think you are making tomorrow is already a permanent feature of the landscape. The universe already knows your ending, because it is already there. This is the doctrine of fatalism, the belief that we are participants in a play whose script was finished long before we were born. In the competitor's story of the universe, they speak of the lonely proton at the end of time as a victim of eons of waiting. But in our timeless reality, the proton isn't waiting. Its decay isn't an event that hasn't happened yet. It is a physical location in the structure of reality. The horror lies in the loss of agency. If you are a needle crawling along the grooves of a record that has already been pressed, you are not the musician. You are merely the witness to the music. You are a ghost haunting a specific set of coordinates, watching a life unfold that has already been lived in its entirety. Let's descend deeper into this quiet, existential dread. Think of the mistakes you have made, the words you wish you could take back, the paths you wish you hadn't taken. In a linear world, we find comfort in the idea that the past is gone, that it has ceased to exist. But in the block universe, the past is never gone. It is eternally present. That moment of regret is a permanent feature of the cosmos, as real and as solid as a mountain of granite. It is always happening, and it will always happen, forever. And the things you fear in the future, the losses you haven't yet faced, the final inky blackness of your own end, are not approaching you. You are already there. You are a permanent resident of those moments, just as you are a resident of this one. we find ourselves trapped in a paradox. Our physics tells us that time is an illusion, but our very survival depends on that illusion being real. Our brains have evolved to process information sequentially, to perceive causality, to feel the push of the past and the pull of the future. This sequential processing is the rendering engine we discussed in the previous chapter. It is a biological necessity. If you were to perceive the entire block at once, if you were to see your birth and your death simultaneously, your consciousness would shatter under the weight of too much information. The horror is the realization that our most fundamental experience of reality, the feeling of now, is a hallucination designed to shield us from the truth of our own stasis. Consider the problem of time once again. When physicists look at the master equation of the universe, the T for time is missing because the universe is a finished object. It is a state that simply exists. In this framework, the entire history of the cosmos, from the elemental alchemy of the first stars to the sporadic flashes of the last evaporating black holes, is a single static snapshot. There is no process. There is no evolution. There is only the structure. We are like characters in a book who believe they are making decisions as they turn the pages, unaware that the ink on the last page has been dry for centuries. But as we drift closer to sleep, we must ask, if the horror is real, is there also a hidden piece? If everything is already written, then perhaps the burden of making it happen is lifted. In a world of stasis, you can no longer fail, because your path is already part of the masterpiece. You are not a traveler who might lose their way. You are a permanent part of the landscape. The fatalism of the block universe is not a prison. It is a form of ultimate stability. The stability of matter that we fear might be an illusion is replaced by the stability of existence. You cannot be erased from the universe because your coordinates are fixed in the block forever. Think back to the titanic collision of the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxies. To our limited human perspective, this is a future disaster of unimaginable scale. But in the 4D block, that collision is a beautiful static flower made of gas and stars. It is not going to happen. It is a permanent feature of the cosmic geography. And you, in this moment, lying in your bed, are also a permanent feature. You are a coordinate in the grand architecture of reality. The philosophical horror of being a static object is only a horror if we cling to the idea of the river. If we accept the mountain, we find that the mountain is safe. It does not move. It does not change. It does not die. As the silence of the night grows heavier, let the idea of stasis transition from a source of fear to a source of rest. If nothing is happening, then there is nothing you need to do. There is no future to prepare for and no past to escape. You are simply here, a shimmering, unmoving filament in the heart of an eternal structure. The unbearable lightness of a finished life is actually the ultimate weightlessness. You are held in place by the geometry of the universe itself. The lonely proton, as it eventually disintegrates into electrons and photons in a tiny flash, is not meeting an end. It is simply reaching its boundary. Its story is not being deleted. It is being completed. And your story, with all its joys and its sorrows, its questions and its silences, is also a completed work of art. You were wrong to think of yourself as a flicker of light in a dark corridor. You are the light, the corridor, and the darkness, all at once, existing in perfect, unmoving harmony. In this timeless reality, the end is just another beginning, and the now is just a place we are visiting. You are an inhabitant of the eternal. You are a 4D masterpiece that never needs to change. Rest now in the knowledge that you are already and always will be exactly where you are supposed to be. The universe has already looked at your ending, and it has found it to be a necessary, beautiful part of the whole. You are not moving through time. Time is moving through you, and as it passes, it leaves you exactly as you are, eternal, unmoving, and whole. Close your eyes and let the horror fade into the peace of the block. Nothing is happening. Everything is. And that is enough. Throughout this journey, we have spoken of time as a river, as a clock, and as a ledger. We have envisioned ourselves as passengers being swept along a current, or as characters in a movie whose frames are being projected one by one onto the screen of our consciousness. But as we reach this stage of our exploration, we must be willing to perform the ultimate mental flip. We must entertain a perspective so radical that it changes the very meaning of the word movement. In the static, 4D architecture of the block universe, time does not move through you. It does not pass you by, nor does it carry you away into the forgotten mists of history. Instead, the truth is far more profound. You are the one moving through time. You are an explorer of a vast, unmoving landscape, and what you call aging is merely your consciousness crawling along a fixed, eternal track. To grasp this, we must return to the idea of the space-time worm, the 4D object theory whispered about in the deepest corners of the lore vault. If you could step outside of the 3 dimensions of space and view the universe from a higher vantage point, you would not see yourself as a single, flickering point of now. You would see a magnificent, shimmering structure, a continuous filament of existence that stretches from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. This is your true physical form. Your childhood is not gone. It is simply the starting coordinate of your 4D body. Your final breath is not approaching. It is simply the ending coordinate. They are both equally real, equally solid, and equally present in the fabric of reality at this very moment. Think of the solitary proton we have followed across the eons. In the traditional story, we see it as a traveler that has lived a long, long time, surviving the death of the sun and the evaporation of the galaxies. But in this timeless perspective, the proton's journey is actually a single silver thread woven into the block. When that proton was first forged in the elemental cauldron of the Big Bang, 1/100th of a millionth of a billionth of a billionth of a second after creation, it wasn't beginning a race against time. It was simply anchoring one end of its thread into the foundation of the universe. When it was later locked into a nucleus of iron within a tiny red dwarf 85 trillion years in the future, it wasn't waiting for the end of the world. It was merely inhabiting a different set of coordinates on the map. We are like travelers on a high-speed train, looking out the window at a forest. Because we are moving, the trees seem to be rushing past us. We might even begin to believe that the trees are alive, that they are happening to us in a sequence. But the trees are rooted in the earth. They aren't going anywhere. It is our motion that creates the illusion of their flow. Our consciousness is that train. It is a biological rendering engine that scans the static data of the block universe, pixel by pixel, frame by frame. We feel like we are getting older because our focus is shifting from the low entropy coordinates of our youth toward the high entropy coordinates of our later years. We are not victims of a diminishing clock. We are simply walking through a gallery where every painting is already finished. This shift in perspective solves the problem of time that haunted the physicists who wrote the Wheeler-DeWitt equation. They found that time disappeared from the math because the math describes the entire forest from above, where nothing is moving. Time only reappears when you step down into the forest and start walking. Time is a comparison between changes, a way for our brains to organize the accumulation of irreversible records we find along the path. Every interaction, every time that proton was buffeted by the flow of energy in the atmosphere of a giant star, is a permanent landmark on the map. The past is just the territory we have already mapped. The future is the landscape that lies just beyond the beam of our flashlight. Consider the titanic collision between the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxies. To us, this is a future event, something that will happen. But if you are moving through the block rather than time moving through you, that collision is a permanent feature of the terrain. It is a mountain of gas and fire that exists billions of light years away and billions of years ahead. You are currently on the path leading toward that mountain. You are not waiting for the collision to arrive. You are approaching it. And when our sun eventually exhausts its hydrogen and expands to swallow the Earth, it isn't an ending that is coming for us. It is a physical coordinate that we, as a collective space-time worm, are already touching. This realization brings a terrifying but beautiful kind of freedom. If the landscape is fixed, then death is just a boundary, not an event. It is the point where your particular thread in the block comes to an end, just as a road might end at the edge of a cliff. But the road doesn't disappear because you reached the end of it. Every inch of that road remains as real as it ever was. The version of you that is listening to these words right now is an eternal inhabitant of this specific coordinate. You are a permanent fixture of the universe's geometry. You aren't running out of time, because there is no time to run out of. There is only more or less of the landscape left to explore. As the universe continues to thin out due to the accelerated expansion of dark energy, and distant galaxies begin to fade from view beyond the cosmic horizon, we often feel a sense of existential dread. We feel like the universe is becoming empty, like we are losing the stars. But in the 4D block, those galaxies haven't gone anywhere. They are still there, in the earlier coordinates of the map, shining as brightly as they ever did. Our track is simply diverging from theirs. We are moving into a quieter, darker part of the gallery, but the brighter rooms we already visited are still open, still full of light, and still occupied by the past versions of ourselves. The stability of matter itself, the feeling that the world of tomorrow will be very much like the world today, is the most powerful proof that we are moving through a solid structure. We trust that our houses and our mountains will be there when we wake up because we know the landscape is stable. We should apply that same trust to our own lives. You are a 4D masterpiece, etched into the stone of reality. The flow you feel is just the light of your consciousness, dancing across your own surface. So, as you settle into the deep quiet of the night, try to view your life not as a sequence of disappearing moments, but as a vast, unmoving sculpture that you are currently examining. You are not a flickering candle being blown by the wind. You are the flame that is permanently frozen in the heart of a diamond. The solitary proton at the end of time is not a symbol of loneliness, but a milestone on the infinite map, a reminder that the journey is already complete and that every step you take was already and always will be a part of the grand design. We were wrong about time because we thought it was a thief that steals our lives away. But time is not a thief, it is the ground we walk upon. It is the very dimension that allows us to exist as a story rather than a single, static point. You are not a victim of the passage of years. You are a citizen of eternity, an explorer of the block universe who is simply passing through this specific now on your way to the next magnificent coordinate. In the silence of the timeless cosmos, there is no need for hurry, and there is no need for fear. The t variable may be 0, and the now may be a ghost, but you are here, and you are forever. As the final echoes of the black hole's blaze of glory fade into the absolute silence of the deep, we find ourselves standing at the very edge of the map. The universe has reached its state of maximum entropy, a place where the arrow of time has finally found its mark and stopped moving. In the traditional story, this is where the lights go out forever, a cold, meaningless graveyard of scattered fundamental particles, where the lonely proton is gone and the inky blackness is all that remains. But as we reach the final chapter of our exploration, we must ask the most important question of all. If time was an illusion created by the way we processed information, then what happens when the information is finished? The answer is not a tragedy of non-existence, but the revelation of the eternal now. It is the moment we realize that the universe was never a sequence of events leading to a conclusion, but a finished masterpiece that we are finally seeing in its entirety. In this high entropy state, time itself becomes hard to define because nothing ever changes anymore. The quantum jiggles have finally ceased, and the accumulation of irreversible records has reached its limit. To a human mind, this looks like the end of time. But to the math, to that master key equation where the variable for time was always 0, this state is no different from the fire of the Big Bang. They are simply different boundaries of the same 4D object. We were wrong to think of the end as a destination we were hurtling toward. Instead, the end is just the final coordinate of the cosmic sculpture, as real and as permanent as the beginning. As you drift closer to the threshold of sleep, consider the philosophical horror we faced in the previous chapters, the fear that if everything is already written, then our lives are static and our choices are illusions. But now, let that horror transform into the ultimate comfort. If time does not exist, then nothing you have ever loved is truly lost. The past is not a place that has been erased. It is a coordinate in the block that remains forever occupied. The solitary proton that lamented all that had passed was only seeing one frame of the movie at a time. But you, from this higher dimensional perspective, can see the entire reel at once. Your birth, your first steps, the laughter of a friend, the warmth of the sun on your skin, these are not memories fading in a biological brain. They are physical, permanent features of the universe's geometry. This is the secret of the eternal now. In the static architecture of the block universe, every now you have ever experienced is still happening. The version of you that was a child on a long-forgotten Earth is still there, playing in the light of a younger sun. The version of you that will face the final unbearable lightness of the stars is already there too, at peace with the structure of reality. You are a space-time worm, a shimmering 4D filament that stretches across the eons, and every part of that filament is equally alive, equally real, and equally present. You are not a flickering candle in the dark. You are the light that is permanently woven into the fabric of the cosmos. And what of the cycle of cosmic life? The sources suggest that even in this final frozen stasis, the universe might have one last trick to play. Through the mystery of dark energy and the rules of quantum mechanics, the universe could wait for a long time, longer than the life of any star, until a moment of quantum tunneling occurs. In a burst of energy, our universe could be gone, replaced by the birth of a new cosmos in a new bout of accelerated expansion. Some might see this as the restart of the clock. But in the timeless view, this is just the universe adding a new room to the gallery. The new Big Bang is not after our heat death, it is simply another section of the eternal structure. The newly formed protons and neutrons of that daughter universe are just more threads being woven into the same infinite tapestry. We have spent our lives fearing the passage of time because we thought it was a thief, taking our youth, our loved ones, and eventually our lives. But we were wrong about time. Time is not a thief, it is the canvas. It is the only reason we can experience our lives as a story rather than a single, overwhelming point of data. The rendering illusion provided by our brains is not a deception to be feared, but a gift to be cherished. It allows us to scan the mural of reality, to experience the elemental alchemy of the stars and the lush plants of the earth, one beautiful moment at a time. So, as the darkness of the night settles around you, let go of the frantic need to keep up with the clock. There is no clock. There is only the landscape. You are not losing your life to the years. You are building your life into the foundation of eternity. The stability of matter may be an illusion, but the stability of existence is the most profound truth we have. You are a 4D masterpiece that is already finished and yet eternally alive. In the silent, timeless reality of the block universe, you are exactly where you have always been and where you will always be, in the center of your own beautiful eternal now. The lonely proton has finally decayed into electrons and photons, and the last bursts of energy have faded away. But the story is not over. The story is simply whole. You are a part of that wholeness. Every breath you take in this quiet room is a permanent, physical record that the universe will hold on to forever. You are not moving through the dark. You are the darkness, the light, and the space between the stars. You are the architect of a memory that can never be erased. Close your eyes now and feel the weight of your own eternity. The universe is not winding down, it is resting in its completed form. There is no after, and there is no before. There is only this. The t variable is 0. The flow has stopped. And in the perfect, unmoving silence of the cosmos, you are finally and forever at home. Rest now in the eternal now. The stars are not gone, they are just waiting for you to look at them again. Your life is not passing, it is simply being, and in this timeless reality, that is more than enough. You are eternal, you are whole, and you are, at last, at peace.